Hey everyone, welcome back. Today, we're going to talk about one of the most famous books on money ever written, Rich Dad, Poor Dad by Robert Kiyosaki. Now, here's the thing. This isn't a book full of complicated numbers or boring financial terms. It's a story of two dads, two mindsets, and two very different outcomes in life. One dad worked hard, got good grades, earned a stable job, but always struggled financially. The other dad wasn't as highly educated, but he understood how money worked, and he built real wealth. In this video, I'll break down the biggest lessons from this book, share examples you can connect with, and show you how they might change the way you see money. So, let's get into it. Lesson 1. The Tale of Two Dads. Robert had two father figures in his life. His real dad, the poor dad, was a man who valued education above everything else. He believed in studying hard, getting a good job, and climbing the corporate ladder. But no matter how hard he worked, money was always tight. Then there was his friend's dad, the rich dad. This man didn't have a fancy education, but he understood business, investing, and how to make money work for him. Over time, he became a successful entrepreneur. The book compares these two mindsets throughout, and that's the foundation of everything. How you think about money can either trap you or free you. Lesson 2. Why financial education matters. Think back to your school years. You learned math, history, science, maybe even literature. But did anyone actually teach you how money works? Probably not. Poor Dad believed that going to school and getting a degree would guarantee financial success. Rich Dad disagreed. He said the most powerful tool we have is our mind, and if you don't train it to understand money, you'll end up working for those who do. For example, Poor Dad thought job security was the ultimate goal. Rich Dad thought financial freedom was the ultimate goal. Poor Dad said, "Study hard so you can work for a good company." Rich Dad said, "Study money so you can own the company." That's a huge difference, and it explains why so many people work all their lives but never feel financially secure. Lesson 3. Assets versus liabilities. This is the lesson that shook people the most. Rich Dad explained it in the simplest way. Assets put money into your pocket. Liabilities take money out of your pocket. It sounds simple, right? But here's the twist. Most people don't actually know the difference. They buy things they think are assets, but in reality, they're liabilities. For example, a lot of people say their house is their biggest asset. But if you're paying a mortgage, repairs, insurance, and it's not bringing in any income, it's actually a liability. Unless it generates cash flow, it's not an asset. Assets can be things like rental properties, stocks that pay dividends, intellectual property, or even a YouTube channel that makes money. Liabilities are things like new cars, expensive gadgets on credit, or that big house that drains your bank account every month. The middle class often works harder just to buy more liabilities, thinking they're moving up in life. Rich people, they focus on acquiring assets, and then they let those assets pay for their luxuries. Lesson 4. Don't work for money. Make money. Work for you. This is one of my favorite lessons. Most of us are trained to work for money. We wake up, go to our jobs, get paid, and repeat. But if we stop working, our income stops too. That's called trading time for money. Rich Dad flipped this idea. He said, "Don't just work for money, make money work for you." What does that mean? It means building income streams that don't rely on your 9 to 5. Maybe it's investing in real estate, starting a business, or owning stocks. Think about it. Imagine if your investments could cover your bills every month. Your job then becomes optional, not a necessity. That's financial freedom. Lesson 5. Fear, risk, and learning from failure. Why do most people never invest, never start a business, and never build wealth? One word: fear. Poor Dad was afraid of losing money, so he stayed safe. Rich Dad wasn't reckless, but he wasn't afraid to fail either. He taught Robert that the fear of losing money is what keeps people poor. The rich don't avoid risk. They manage it. They learn. They take small steps. They make mistakes. And they keep going. Think about it. The average person saves their money in a bank, earning almost nothing. Why? Because it feels safe. Meanwhile, the wealthy put their money into investments that grow over time. They might lose sometimes, but in the long run, they win because they learn from every mistake. Lesson 6. The Mindset Shift. This book is less about technical money advice and more about mindset. Here's a small example. Poor dad often said, "I can't afford it." Rich dad always said, "How can I afford it?" That tiny difference changes everything. Saying, "I can't afford it," shuts down your brain, but asking, "How can I afford it?" forces your brain to find solutions. And that's the secret. Wealth begins in the mind. If you believe money is hard to get, it will be. If you believe opportunities are out there, you'll start finding them. Lesson 7. Work to learn, not just to earn. Another gem from the book. Poor dad thought working was just about earning a paycheck. Rich dad believed you should work to learn. In other words, don't just chase money, chase skills. Learn sales, marketing, investing, communication. These skills can open doors that money alone never will. That's why so many wealthy people started small, maybe even failing a few times. But they gained skills that built long-term success. Conclusion. The big takeaway. So, what's the bottom line of Rich Dad, Poor Dad? It's not about working harder. It's about working smarter. It's about financial education, building assets, managing risk, and most of all, shifting your mindset. Poor Dad was highly educated, but financially limited. Rich Dad had less schooling, but he understood money, and that made all the difference. The message is simple. Don't just trade time for money. Build assets, learn about money, and let your money work for you. Thanks for spending this time with me as we explored Rich Dad, Poor Dad. If you enjoyed this review, hit the like button and subscribe for more powerful book breakdowns and money tips. And I'd love to know, do you feel like you've been thinking more like the poor dad or the rich dad? Let me know in the comments. Until next time, remember, the richest lessons in life aren't about money itself. They're about how you think about money.